Well, hello there, everyone. Welcome to another ShoeFitts Digital Institute live broadcast. This is Discover the Simple Secrets of Deconstructing Digital. James Hilliard with you. Craig, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it. Liz, good to see you out there. Got Pam on board with us, seeing some familiar names, and Tracy out there as well, Roseanne, and everyone else. Really appreciate you taking time to join us. As you know, Sherry Fitz is going to be our leader for the next hour here, the president of ShoeFitts Marketing. A popular speaker, she is also, now I can officially say, author of the newly published, yay! If we had streamers and things, they'd be dropping from the ceiling. The newly published Deconstructing Digital book is available for order. Simple ways to connect with your next generation financial clients. You can pick up the book and get your order on over at Amazon right now. We've also got some things. We'll be talking a lot about the book here today. But the first thing we kind of have to do is play a little game with Sherry. And this is, where in the world is Sherry? I've been talking to her about today's event. And so, Sherry, it's either Boston or Denver. Which one today?
So the last place I was Boston. I was doing an event. John Hancock was my sponsor, and I was doing an LPL due diligence event, and I did a presentation, Social Selling for Financial Advisors. So that was in Boston. And now today, Monday I was in Portland actually doing an internal training event for the Standard for their internal wholesalers. So that was really cool because it was in town. And then yesterday I came to Denver and I did an event for an elite group of retirement plan advisors for Cambridge, and Emeritus was my sponsor. And that one was, pretty much this deconstructing digital thing. And then today I'm doing a keynote for the larger Cambridge group on your brand, your business, your bottom line. And then Friday, I'm speaking to the Northwest Summit for Financial Professionals on Networking 2.0. And then I get to do I'm going to be the closing keynote, which is pretty hilarious and fantastic, for a startup conference in Portland called Stages PDX. And the title is How to Be a Startup Badass.
Nice.
So let me show you this. This is hilarious because this is my tweet. Do I have it here now? I probably don't. Let me do this really fast and show you guys my tweet. So hang on, view profile. I'll show you what I've been doing lately when I go to Starbucks. There. Can you see, James?
Yeah, I can see it. Front and center, there's a badass.
So now when I go to Starbucks, yes, I say, they're like, what's your name? And I'm like, badass. Funny though, I showed this to a friend of mine, and he's from Virginia, and he always says Bubba, which is pretty funny. That's his name.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
she's all over the place. Actually, folks, we've put in the handout section of the webcast player here from GoToWebinar here. If you click on that little handouts area, you'll see one of the speaking menus, and it just tells you kind of where Sherry's going to be. So if you're in and around, you're affiliated with any of the groups that are putting on some of these conferences and speeches where Sherry's at, you'll see what the menu is. You'll see where she's at. You might be able to catch up with her live. We're glad that you're catching up virtually here today. And again, we're really going to be diving into Deconstructing Digital. Now, Deconstructing Digital, this is not a super deep dive. This is really trying to get, in Sherry's focus here, was get you thinking about things like clarifying your message, thinking about communicating to that newer generation of financial clients. You've got folks out there that are kind of expecting to get tweets or Facebook updates or see things on LinkedIn from those that are providing them services, including you folks, right? Folks in financial services. So a theme that we're going to keep coming back to today is this idea of kind of centering around simplicity. And again, I think there's a lot that we're going to get through in the hour. So keep your questions and comments coming in. If you've got something you want us to stop down and take a little more of a deep dive into something, we can. But you really all are getting kind of a sneak peek. This is the first time of the very first times that Sherry, again, is going to talk about the book and some of the ideas in here. So we're glad you're here for kind of this sneak peek first look. Order it on Amazon, give her a review on Amazon. Harder launch the book coming next month. But with that, Sherry, let's kind of dive on in, and I'll pop on in with some questions and comments as we go along.
Dandy. And to that end, I am in Denver, and I'm staying in the Grand Hyatt here in Denver, and I do have my Do Not Disturb thing on the door, so we should all be okay for a while. But James, you'll be proud of me. I brought my mic and my great headset, so hopefully the sound is okay today.
It sounds fabulous.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to do something. I just kind of wanted to touch on some concepts that we've talked about before, which is this idea of how the internet has shifted the way we buy, right? Looking back to 1995 with the introduction of the internet, it really has shifted the way we buy. However, my perception is that it hasn't necessarily shifted the way we sell things in financial services. And that's the gist of this understanding of the digital sphere. So that's what I want to jump into today a little bit. Is you're obviously here because you're interested in that and you self-selected, so I'm sure you were already kind of say, yeah, I get that we need to do something differently. But it does seem to me that many people's efforts around this idea of selling are stuck in the 90s. And really, Google changed everything. Google changed everything, or what we could do with Google, you know, granted it's really the internet that changed everything, but when people go to find things, most of us put the Google on it, as my girlfriend says. I think I'll put the Google on it. So but I want you to know that obviously that shifted to predominantly a large group of people that are called Generation D. So there's 75 million people in that, and I believe that's actually growing, and $25 trillion worth of assets, which I don't know about you, but I would love just a basis point on that. I'd be super fine. I keep doing these broadcasts, though, because I love them. But, you know, some other things maybe I'd stop. But Generation D is a huge group of individuals that you would call digital natives in a way. And it's not millennials, by the way. It is 25% baby boomers, and then the next chunk of 50% is Generation X, and then there's 25% millennials. So I think most people say to me, well, my clients are not online. And while that might be true for some of your clients, I think that there's several things I want you to understand. And in fact, yesterday, one of the advisors said to me, because he's bringing his son on who's younger, and he has just done stuff the old school way. In fact, he's got a website that's 13 years old. And they asked me specifically, how do I navigate this shift from old school, you know, handshake, relationship stuff to the digital world? How do we do that as an organization? And I don't necessarily think that that those two things are separate. I frankly think that they're the same, just using different channels, if you will. So my perspective is continue to do what you would kind of talk about as the old school type of thing. Continue to do that, and then add in a digital overlay, because then you can start to sweep up this next generation of financial clients. So, you know, think of it from that particular perspective. Another advisor said to me, well, you know, I need to redo my website, and I said, why? And I really want you to ask your question about that. Why? Because in some cases, absent a succession plan, many advisors are great and fine with the book of business that they have. Growth is not necessarily something that they want to embrace right now. Now, I believe that there should be a succession plan. Why leave your business just to kind of peter out? And in fact, most advisor businesses do kind of just kind of fade away through kind of just, you know, lack of care or whatnot. But in a succession plan situation, you know, the more that you can be out there and be out there with your brand and be out there on the digital thing, the better. So, you know, obviously your clients are online. nearly 50%, right, of people on Facebook are friends with their own parents. My father died a year ago, last September or whatnot, and I actually learned about one of his cousins through another cousin, etc., because I didn't really know her, and she's 78, and she's active on Facebook. So I just want you to understand that people are using these channels. Whether it makes sense to sell financial services on Facebook is a whole other thing, and I have opinions about that, but nonetheless, you can still learn an awful lot about people if you're friends with them on Facebook. So let's kind of talk about another thing. I was very surprised the other day because I will not name the entity, but I received a call, a cold call, a very unprepared cold call from a financial advisor, a wirehouse in Portland. So he'd obviously gotten my name and number from some kind of list or whatnot, and I knew a lot about his particular organization, and in fact I knew a lot about, as an example, some things that are going on in the organization on the retirement plan side because we're actually helping a client with that. But he didn't know anything about me. So he didn't even take the time to go onto my LinkedIn before calling me to understand what I do. So it was a very awkward call because I knew more about him than he knew about me. I think that cold calling is mostly dead. Mostly dead, I think. Some of the things I'm going to talk about today, combined with cold calling in a strategic way, might double down and help your cold calling be more successful. And that's what I'd love. So what happens, though, is a lot of advisors go, okay, I get you, Sherry. You've been preaching this since 2006 about the world and the digital world and all that kind of stuff. I'm finally ready to kind of figure this stuff out. So let's get going. And when I start to ask them questions that, I believe that you need to do in order to establish a digital presence, understand what the plan is, most people are overwhelmed. And it's totally fine. I mean, that's why I have a job, right? But also that's why I wrote the book. It's Deconstructing Digital, Simple Ways to Connect with Your Next Generation Financial Clients. And really what I do in the book is do more theory than practical, do this and this and this and this. It's difficult to do practical this and this and this in an environment where things are changing constantly. So James and I were actually talking about that before we got started, and the practical piece of doing this and this and click here and do this, that's my social selling boot camp, and that starts again in July. This is a really nice, fast, easy way for you to start to understand the theory behind the various platforms and what I would do if I were in your shoes, pun intended. So a piece of that, though, is how all of these things work together. And what I want to do is kind of show you that today. I want to show you how all of the pieces work together. Now, I have this concept about what marketing should be now versus where it's been. And the concept is really around thought leadership. And you've likely heard of it as possibly inbound marketing. Let me explain. And that is that you have such a strong position, right, that you tackle, that you take on, that you own, that you are known for that. So my piece is you don't tell people you're a thought leader, you show them. And McKinsey and Company, right, McKinsey, the research firm and consulting firm, they started this way back, I think late 60s, early 70s, with the onslaught of research and white papers and giving those away for free, right? They really started to hone this idea of thought leadership. And Forbes also knows that by becoming thought leaders, professional services firms garner enormous business benefits. They become the go-to providers for their expertise. They make it dramatically easier for clients and centers of influence to refer new qualified prospects to them. And they have much higher realization rates. also, right? They are instrumental in advancing their field by delivering meaningful, value-added materials to select audiences. So Forbes publication, obviously, thought leader, right? And thought leaders build their business in that particular way. So people come find you rather than you go find them. Thought leaders write, they speak, they publish research, they use social platforms to scale and amplify their reach. So also, one piece that I want you to understand is how can you scale your marketing? How can you touch many people with one piece of content versus one person in a one-on-one capacity? I know the power of one, right? I know what a handshake means. I know the importance of follow-up individually. I know what an individual introduction can do. I know that. And I also know that by using the digital world and the social world, I'm able to amplify my reach. So no longer am I just in Portland, Oregon. I am actually a national speaker, and September I will be able to count myself as international because I'm going to Canada. So, yay.
That's going to work.
Right?
There's something, Sherry, on this list I'll challenge you on. I want to add it, but you tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that thought leaders listen. And I think listening allows them then to write and to speak, because you can go out there and do all these things. But if your audience isn't looking for that leadership, you could be going off in the wrong direction. And that's one of the things. I know you'll touch on this a bit later, but it's important here, I think, because that's what social is great at allowing folks to do. And we know in financial services, there are rules and regulations and some things you can and can't do, but you can always listen through these channels. And so do you want to talk and touch on that for a moment here of the value in listening as well? Because I think that's what a thought leader also does, is listens very well. You listen well.
Well, thank you. I'm a information junkie, James. I mean, I don't have enough time in the day to read everything I want to read and learn everything I want to know, right? And I do get much of that particular information via social channels, and you're absolutely right. I'm going to have to change this slide when I do this again, because you're right. Listening is one of the most valuable things that our organizations can do, and in fact, listening, if you think about it, right, is something that advisor who cold called me the other day didn't do.
Didn't listen to you at all. Had no idea who you were. And yet you broadcast that out there. You have these events, you have the website, you have other things. So there was a lot that group could have listened to had they taken a little bit of time, but they didn't. And that's where this idea first sparked on me. It was like that group just had no idea who you were because you were the audience. And so I love folks to just realize, especially about social and people that are getting started with social, that great listening channel. And then it allows all these other things that are listed here to really, really flourish.
You know, and I think the thing that's kind of interesting, and I'll take us down a rat hole for a minute, but let's just talk about the fact that I said that cold calling is mostly dead. If that person would have taken 2 minutes to Google my name and or go to LinkedIn and look at my profile, he could have, one, decided whether I was worthy of a call. He would have known what my firm did, because it just says marketing, right, because that's the code that we use. But he could have been more prepped for that call. And that's why I'm saying cold calling is mostly dead. Take what you can learn and listen in the social sphere and apply it to your cold calling efforts. And I am absolutely certain you'll see a higher realization rate, even without all of this other stuff.
And then that takes the cold call to kind of the warmer call. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
something to learn there. Cool little note. So, all right, I diverted us a little bit, but it was something I really think is worth sharing about. Again, the listening. And I know you've talked about this a lot before about how these are great channels to listen as well. So I'm going to hush on up, folks. Keep on getting your questions or comments in. Tom got you out there in the audience. We got Dana and Jim. A couple Jims out there. Jarrett, welcome to you. Got Brian on board as well. So if you have any other questions or comments, fire those away. And Sherry, I'll fire it back to you.
Well, so think about this idea of a thought leader. And when I talk about it in the book, I say that really what you want to do is share your smarts. And the fact of the matter is when we're going to do this more next month and talking about blogging and creating content and what you give away, and I go deeper into the book about ideas about sharing your smarts. But as a thought leader, you know, the easiest way to think about it is how can you share your smarts? How can you share things that you know with your community or your tribe, right, that will help them in one avenue or another? And it doesn't always have to be related to their financial lives. I mean, you know, our financial lives are all consuming, but how could you provide ways to help your clients, you know, help their children find better ways to finance college, as an example? I mean, it does touch on their financial lives, but sharing your smarts. And so I give some ideas, but that's what thought leaders do. They share smarts. Now, there are so many avenues of a really solid sales and marketing structure and plan. And we've touched on some of these in various things, from a search engine optimized website, right, to PR and advertising, social media, you know, white papers, blogs, and everything. If you'll notice, social media is only one piece of this bigger puzzle. It is not a standalone thing. And I have to remind my husband of that regularly because he tells me that social media is going away, which I think probably the term is, but the impact on our lives and our marketing is not going away. And people will always need to sell something, which means they will always need to market something, which means if I keep my, you know, head above the fray and listen better, I'll always have a job. But for today's purposes, I want to streamline this sales and marketing kind of plan into just several pieces. And I'm going to walk you through it a little bit. So first and foremost, your website is not a brochure. Your website is your digital home base. Your website is a living, breathing person, let's just say that, right, or a staff member of your sales and marketing efforts. Your website is critical to your business in the digital world, as far as I'm concerned, and in particular with your next generation of financial clients. So I'm not going to dive into what a, you know, digital branding is, although there is a webinar that we did a while ago, so you can go hunt that down on ShoeFitts.com. But I do have a little handout for you. It is it time for a website checkup? And it talks a little bit about your website and some of the things we would look at if we were talking with you about what to do about your website. Again, yesterday I saw a website that was 13 years old, and I frankly feel like it did more harm than good. We're redoing a website for an organization in the Chicagoland area, and they're a small firm, and they actually lost an opportunity because someone went out and looked at their website, which was, you know, what people do. Google has changed everything. But you do also have to address the fact that your website needs to feed the Google beast. It must. And what that means is that content is king. Content is king. Interestingly, the other day I noticed that Cogent Research came out with some information, and they interviewed 85 advisors across the United States and a variety of defined contribution investment only firms and financial services organizations and whatnot. And what they found, which is no surprise, is that advisors would prefer to have thought leadership content, right, trends articles, helpful technology tips and whatnot, versus a product sale from their mutual fund and financial services partners. Duh. The last thing you want to do is get sold. Chances are you have screening devices going on left and right to know which mutual funds to use. And You could spend every day with every hour every day with a wholesaler. And likewise, I'm sure your clients could too. So how do you cut through the clutter? Well, you provide things of value, you share your smarts, and you write content, right? Because that is what drives differentiation, and that, again, back to what Forbes says, helps you have higher realization rate. Now, if you look at my theory of this whole social world, I think you need to spend some time creating original content. You can curate, right, other people's content, and then obviously you need to connect. Given the noise that is going on in all of the social platforms and the amount of content that is being shared left and right, again, think of these social platforms as a way for you to reach across this digital divide and scale the way you connect with people, and they connect with you, right? So let me back up a little bit and talk to you about my theory of marketing. When I started in sales and marketing, it was 1998, and I was kind of this de facto head of a subsidiary of an investment consulting firm, and I was selling participant education and communication. So it started as a graphic designer in 1990, and then in 1998 I ended up kind of migrating from, doing participant newsletters to managing the department and then de facto head. And I had to start selling things because our salesperson left. So here I had a team of people, and if somebody didn't sell, then we wouldn't have a job. But I didn't have any marketing budget. So I started kind of looking at how could I find ways to get in front of people. Now, every time we try to find ways to get in front of people, we find ways to tell people don't bother us. I mean, I frankly believe that the best invention ever was the DVR. And I'm so glad that my friend Ann Linton told me about her TiVo when that still existed. But the DVR allows me to skip past commercials, which are a waste of time, and get back to my Walking Dead episode. So this idea of don't bother me continues. You have a federal do not call list, which frankly I thought I was on. I take my direct mail that I get, I'm not interested in it, and I walk it over to the garbage can and recycle it, although I try to use paper karma to opt out of it. There are emails that I receive that do not provide value to me, and I put them directly, I opt out of them. You do this too, right? So there's no value. If somebody's trying to sell me something and I don't want it right now, I'm going to find a way to avoid it. So there are two types of marketing, and back to 1998, I found myself in this thing where the outbound marketing is the stuff that costs money. So telemarketing, trade shows, direct mail, all that kind of stuff costs money. And I'm not saying that you don't do it, because when we consult with people, we do it. I totally do it. I mean, we need to. And then inbound marketing. And inbound marketing is this idea of giving your smarts away and then people giving you permission to market to them. So Seth Godin, whom I've probably quoted in broadcasts before, is a marketing god. And I actually got to meet him a couple years ago, and he said my name on stage, and it was like, bucket list check off thing. I could spend all day, every day with him. But the man is brilliant, and he blogs every day, by the way. And he, back in the 90s, late 90s, started to coin this idea of permission marketing because he is a visionary and he pays attention, and he started to see how the internet was changing things. And permission marketing is back to this idea of giving your smarts away over and over again so that people go, all right, I'll let you market to me. This broadcast is an example of permission marketing, because there might be some of you who are new to ShoeFitts and to me, right, who have never kind of interacted with us at all, and you've given me permission to market to you. So now, look out. I mean, you're on my email list now, which we treat with respect and honor and understand that everybody has noise. So the only thing that you will get most of the time is value. Every once in a while we'll have a call to action for you to kind of join us on a boot camp or a webinar. But so we give our smarts away. I mean, I give our smarts away regularly. So I want you to just stare at this diagram for a moment and don't run out and drink vodka. That was me drinking water, by the way. So I want to get my little pen out here because by the end of our conversation today, as I talk really quickly, you're going to understand a little bit about how this works. This is the digital marketing ecosystem. And I've preached about this before, but you need to have a search engine optimized, mobile enabled, valuable, living, breathing website that is packed with you sharing your smarts. So blog posts, and by the way, turn off the comments on your blog post. That came up yesterday at the event that I was at because one of the problems that many compliance people have is with the interactive nature of your blog post. So if compliance says you can't have a blog, then just call it a newsletter. What it is just content, valuable content sitting on your website. The difference between a blog and an article and a newsletter is really fuzzy, but blogs are considered more first person and casual versus a newsletter article could be third person and more formal. That's how I view it. It's easier for me to write first person and casual because all I do is write as if I was speaking to you. Makes it easier. But I want your website packed with content. And then, obviously, there are a variety of other things that I want you to do. And I'm going to explain it, but let's just talk about this one piece right here, which is this little velvet rope. And the velvet rope just cordons off extra special, valuable, people call them bribes, you can call them whatever you want, right? Extra special, valuable content that we call a lead magnet. And a lead magnet is something that, before you can get your hands on it, I'm going to ask you for your email address. So possibly some of you have actually opted in to get my 100 social media tips on my website. It's an ebook, and that's my lead magnet right now. And what and I would encourage you, if you haven't done that, to go and do that just merely to go through the experience. And transparently, I take you through something that's an indoctrination thing, where I introduce myself, a little bit about myself, then a little bit about ShoeFitts and why, and then a little bit about how we help financial services firms. In fact, somebody who just recently opted in said, yeah, I almost feel kind of uncomfortable because it was like, oh, I was talking specifically to them, and it was a little personal. And that is me, right? But that's also part of this indoctrination series that we have in place. So if you've not gone to my website and opted into my social media tips, just do it just for the experience thing and start to look at what you think is good and what you think is bad. But that's my lead magnet, right? So, excuse me. So let's look at how that works. So if we've got this website, right, that's mobile enabled, responsive, valuable content outside the velvet rope, then you've got some stuff inside the velvet rope. And how you allow people to get to the velvet rope is you just have like a web landing page or a way for people to subscribe. Constant Contact, Emma, Infusionsoft, ConvertKit, MailChimp, they all have a way for you to have some kind of plug-in to put onto your website. Now, when we build out websites, we always build them from scratch on WordPress. So these kind of things are wonderful because they all kind of plug in together. But this, right, this little web landing page allows me to capture your email address and add you to my email list. And then what I do, right, is then I email you, and I call those emails nurturing because you're not ready to buy yet, and I'm not ready to call all 5,000 people on my email list, but it's a way for me to stay top of mind and unforgettable, right? So every once in a while, I knock on your inbox door with a really good subject line, and I say, remember us, remember me, right? Here's something that you might want to try in your business. So that's the way that I nurture. So I do not call those email blasts. I prefer to either call them email broadcasts or email or nurturing emails, right? And that's the purpose. Now, in some cases, depending on your audience, and again, I talk about this a little bit more in the book, you may opt to just have the email as a standalone article that people can read right then and there. Remember, they're reading on a smartphone. Or you may opt to do some kind of synopsis and push people back to your website. I believe that most people have this perception of an email going out, an email newsletter, like the old school newsletter. So many of us in the 90s, I coded my first website in 1997 or 98, I think. Many of us just went, okay, let's take our brochure, take all that content and just move it online. Now we do the same thing with our newsletters. We take this printed newsletter that used to be a PDF, and sometimes we just email a PDF, which you're asking people to work too hard for that. But then the other piece that we're probably doing is thinking, all right, if we don't do a PDF, maybe we should do maybe we should just do it like an HTML email, all fancy and everything. You don't have to do that any longer. Well, one, the platforms that I talked about allow you to be able to do it much easier if you want to. Don't think of this newsletter nurturing thing as multiple articles. Think of it as one message or one short article that people can read when they're in line at the grocery store and they don't want to buy Wrigley's Spearmint Gum. Yesterday, as probably many of you are thinking, an advisor said the reason why she doesn't want to do emails is because she can't stand it. It is so noisy. She feels like she is more protective of her email address than her social security number. Which, frankly, I'm there. You know, as I mentioned at the top, I am just a information just voracious. I can't get enough. And so I've subscribed to many, many, many emails. And it's very hard because I spend most every day just going, should I even bother opening that, because I don't have the time to really get that. That's why I use Feedly as an RSS reader and try to quiet things down. But still, nonetheless, I get a lot of emails. Still, email marketing provides a 2 times higher return on investment than cold calling, networking, or trade shows. Still, email readership is up because that impulse purchase thing at the grocery store line is down. Because people carry their email inbox with them all the time now. So if you've got a sassy subject line, they might just open it because they're bored and they don't want to look at the headlines on the National Enquirer. So email marketing works. And email open rates are going up. Our open rates at ShoeFitts vary between 16 and 25%. Most advisors, again, tell me, well, nobody reads it, which my response is, well, your headline probably sucks. So who would want to read something that said, new blog, April blog, or, you know, first quarter economic update? Nobody, I mean, I don't know what your readership will be. It depends on your clients and whether they're stock nerds, and they might want to, very well want to, and that subject line might work for them. But for most people, subject lines really are the thing that compels the open rate. So we work hard on thinking through our subject lines and thinking through our social posts. We want open rates. And that's one of the reasons why, in addition, using an email platform is the best way to go for a variety of reasons. The first of which is that it's CAN-SPAM compliant. If you don't know about CAN-SPAM, I highly recommend you Google it because there are requirements when you send out emails. One of them is obviously allowing people to opt out. Now in Canada, by the way, people must opt in. It's against the law to send an unsolicited email. Whereas in the United States, we still allow people, we have to allow them to opt out. Nonetheless, every time I send out an email, I get a response back or a call. We should talk. That was funny. Is that a Newfoundland? I really love your content, etc., etc. Every time. So I'm able to scale regardless of whether 16% of people open it or 25%. Imagine an email list of 5,000, which is pretty big, obviously. 25% of people choose to open that. That's why I honor people's email inbox, because I'm taking their time. I was preaching yesterday, much like I'm preaching right now, and I said the same thing about a lot of people go, I don't want to do webinars. We've got, we for this particular webinar, I think we had 57 people opt in. I don't know how many people are on right now, but wouldn't you cherish the opportunity to meet with even 5 prospects in one day that self-selected into your webinar? Wouldn't you cherish that? Now, it's a lot of work. I totally understand that, but then take that content, as we do, convert it into an MP4, upload it to the second largest search engine in the world, YouTube, and repurpose your content. So email, back to email, I prefer to call them nurture campaigns. And I wanted to show you a little bit of this in action. So this is actually before we updated the website. This was version number 2.0 of the website. But I wrote an article about Martha Stewart and how she could teach financial advisors about obsolescence. So there's theory, pundits were talking about when Martha sold her Omni Media or whatever for, 2 cents on the dollar or whatnot. That there were several things that Martha really kind of was caught flat-footed on, and one of them was this social space. Now, Martha is the original maker of the maker movement, which is, this movement of cooking and making and candlestick making and making your own crackers at home and whatnot, etc. She's the original one. And Etsy and blogs and recipes and all that kind of thing, she should have fit right in and gone right through with it, but she couldn't figure out the social thing. Couple things. One, besides, she was off her board for 5 years. That 5 years is when Facebook started to flourish, and I'm sure that if she was on her board, she might have been able to do that. But 2, if you Google Martha Stewart food tweets, you will see some that look like cat food, which, if you're going to be known as this person who loves cooking, you got to figure out, you can't just tweet, salmon hash and think people are going to love it. But nonetheless, I wrote an article about it. And next month, we're going to talk about the fact that when you write, you start to see metaphors for writing, and you start to hear things that are perfect for things. But nonetheless, I wrote this article. It's a very long article. So in this particular case, I opted to just have a synopsis email that went out. So I had a synopsis email that went out. Now, also one of the things that I included in this particular post was I also had, just on my blog, I had a lead magnet. So not only does my 100 social media tips is a lead magnet, but I embed lead magnets into some blogs. So if you the Ultimate Digital Gear Guide was one of them that I did recently. That's an 8-page thing on all my favorite digital tips and tricks or whatnot. And in this particular case, I think it was Savvy's 6 Steps to a Savvy Social Strategy or something. I think we went crazy with it, right? But I have a lead magnet embedded in the blog. So it's a way for me, by the way, also to continue to get more information from you, because when you first opt in, maybe we've changed it, but we just asked for emails. I took that same content back to this whole thing about repurposing content, and I posted it on LinkedIn as well. And then here's my 6 steps to spectacular social strategy. This is a lead magnet as well. So your lead magnets don't just have to reside on your website, but this is a way for me to pull people from LinkedIn into my email list. Does that make sense? So what I'm doing is I'm converting people from just a visitor to a suspect. That's what I'm doing. And I'm pulling people into my email list. That email list, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as I'm looking here, I'm imagining that we've got folks out there. Maybe it's Julene, maybe it's Mark that's thinking, hey, we're going to start doing some blogging then for the first time, creating content. Do you advise folks going out with kind of a library of content, writing 4, 5, 6 blog posts and then launching with all of those at one time, so there's more than just one thing as you get started, then adding to it? Do you like hey, just start with one and add to it? What's kind of your thoughts there on how to get started? I know it's a little more tactical, which we're not doing a whole lot today, but this I think is worth diving into for a second.
Well, that's a very good question. And so I think that possibly there are 2 ways to look at it. I'd love for you to have 4 posts in your back pocket so that you've got a buffer, so that as you are getting busy or whatnot, you can go, oh, I've got that. When I record my podcast, every Friday is when I do those recordings, and I always work to try to be 3 ahead of the game. So I've got a little bit of buffer should I end up traveling and not be able to do it or whatnot. Similarly, it's nice to have those things in your back pocket. The nice thing about doing a monthly webcast like this is it provides lots of content in a very easy way to convert. So if nothing else, every month we've got content to share with people. And similarly for the podcast, it's not necessarily an easy way, but it's an ongoing way for me to be able to have content to share with people. The worst thing you can do is have a blog post or a LinkedIn post and only do one.
I see people get frustrated. They may do, 1 or 2, and I only got 3 or 4 likes or something got reshared or whatever. But you have to build an audience, and it's kind of a long game. And so, I like the idea of having a couple things to start with. So if they do like that 1 or 2, and then that goes back to listening, you start getting an idea as you continue to put this out there. What are those folks that are coming to you? What are they interested in, right? What do they want to hear about? When you see something that, gets a lot more reads or shares or comments, well, then, you can do a little more of that content, see if it, resonates. So we've got about 15 more minutes here today, folks. Again, I just want to point out one little item on the webcast player, and that's the handouts area, and there are a couple of things that you can download there. There's some PDFs that Sherry uploaded that are useful for you, so those are available to download right from the webinar player. Again, if you have additional questions or comments, send those on into us, and Sherry, I'll put it back into your hands again with about 15 minutes left in our hour today.
Awesome. So this is an example of digital in action as well from Transamerica. Last year I worked with Richard Tatum, great smart TPA down in Nashville, which is an awesome place to visit, and essentially adopted him for about 4 months where I was his social digital coach. So he did all of the work, right? But I was his social digital coach, and it was part of this series called TPA at a Crossroads. And then Transamerica put it together and created some nice videos around it, and also had an executive summary of really kind of what that went through. And this is Transamerica's. They're using this now of this executive summary is their lead magnet. So you can watch this, but if you want to get the case study or executive summary, you click on it and they say, hang on a second, before you go there, give us your email address. It's very similar, so that's a lead magnet. Now, one thing that you mentioned to me, James, that I do want to talk about really quickly, and I know then I'll have to go fast for another thing, but when I think about this idea of creating content, I'm not necessarily blowing smoke that people are going to all of a sudden just start going, yeah, you're the one, I love this, blah, 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 and share away. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think it's something that you build, and you have to build momentum. However, going back to the fact that Google rules the world, not really, but we'll just say that, right? That I want you to have content on your website so that when somebody comes to your website, they can validate your expertise. So it serves that purpose. It serves the purpose of when people are at your website, and I want people to come back to your website because that's your home, that's your office, right? That validates your expertise.
It allows them to listen to you, right? And see, does this person resonate with me? Is this someone that I feel comfortable with? As opposed to, okay, I know her address and great, she's got a phone number. But other than that, you don't know anything. And that's why it's not a placeholder. It's not a brochure. You have to provide more and express yourself more.
And then here's the deal, right? So and then you repurpose that content. So then the content goes onto LinkedIn as a post. Then the content is an outbound newsletter so that you're able to reuse and repurpose that content. You're able to use it to nurture prospects. You're able to use it to pull people off of the social world and onto your website and into your suspect list. So that's why I want you to think about this idea of content and thinking about repurposing it. In fact, I should probably, Pam's on the line, I should probably totally do here's how to repurpose content webcast. If that sounds good to you guys, put a note into James in the chat thing so that we can, you know, do that. Or maybe I'll just cover that in the blog thing next month. So now, right, so now you've got an idea of my perception of how this works. We have valuable content here, so when people's visiting your website, they can validate your expertise. One blog is bad. One blog a month is good. 2014 for one white paper is bad. One white paper a quarter is good. Similarly, with, you know, the various kind of things, you know, one newsletter is bad. Ongoing touch points of a newsletter is good. So planning is essential. We use a Excel spreadsheet. We look out for the next 12 months. We know what the ShoeFitts Digital Institute is going to be all the way through December. We brainstormed as a team, and we discussed things. We know, like as an example, in November, it's on November 11th, and that is the Great American Smokeout. And in that particular case, start saving your pennies, you guys, because that particular broadcast is going to be $10. And all of the proceeds is going to go to the American Lung Association, because my father passed away of COPD. So, but we know that because we're doing planning, we're looking out. I don't know if you were on my email list, but last Monday, May 9th, was National Missing Sock Day. And I give away socks when I speak, and as thank you treats and whatnot, because it goes well with ShoeFitts marketing. And they are collector's editions, by the way. And, you know, we knew that May 9th was National Missing Sock Day because we planned, we researched. When we don't have an idea for content, we start listening, James, so to that point. So, and then the other piece, though, is many advisors, when I look at their website, they don't have a way to convert a visitor into a suspect, into a prospect, into a client. And this way of exchanging emails for value is one of the ways that you can do that. You still want value that's not behind a velvet rope, and then you still want to have extra special offers. Is exactly what this webinar is exactly what my 100 social media tips is a way to say, wait, this is even more valuable. So, you know, thank you for visiting, but in order to sign up, hand over your email address. And then we convert that to this ongoing nurturing thing. Now, what that does do, as I just have pointed out, is allow you ways to repurpose that content. So when I'm in the social world, I sometimes point back to content that we've created, that I've created. So blog posts or, you know, other documents or whatever. I'm not just out there chit-chatting. I am sometimes, you know, my badass coffee cup is just a chit-chat, and that's totally fine. I'm supporting the Stages PDX thing, but I'm also doing it with purpose every once in a while, driving people back to my website so that I hopefully can convert them. That's one thing. And then I also am still curating other people's valuable content that I look at and I go, well, wow, that AARP video, if you haven't seen it, about millennials and their perception of how somebody who's 50 years old walks across the street, tells me that in the world of millennials and finances and the word retirement, we've got some work to do. Because when you say retirement, many folks go, oh, that's when you go to a home and die. Right? So it's still valuable content. I just don't simply share it. I share it with my perspective so that I continue to build this perspective of thought leadership. I also give shout outs to people who've referred me business, as I did on this particular piece. So centers of influence that we talked about last month. We did a National Kindness Day thing, and I had pictures of us as a team, you know, out on the road giving away kind bars. So I don't, in the social sphere, I do it with purpose. I understand what I'm doing, but some of that purpose is to pull people off of that noise and onto my website so that I can indoctrinate you and you will hire me. That's the purpose in a nutshell. If I don't do that, if I just am out there chatting or sharing content, but without a real purpose of pulling you back to my website, all of the platforms can change the rules, and all the work that I've done to build a community will go away. Facebook changed the rules recently, and there were many people who had business sites or whatnot that were in a bit of a quandary, because one day they were Facebook kings and the next day they were nobody because Facebook changed the rules. Well, I'm fine interacting on Facebook, and we have a ShoeFitts marketing Facebook page, and I'm not that active on it because frankly, it doesn't necessarily serve my business right now. But I'm active on LinkedIn, and I work to pull people out of LinkedIn and onto ShoeFitts.com, because LinkedIn could change the rules and I could be up a creek. Again, I want your social stuff, your digital world, to serve a business purpose. I want you to think of, how can you be interacting in these spheres, sharing content that serves your business purpose and that also pulls people off the social platforms and in. Finally, I guess this idea of social networking, I want you to think about it as increasing your social capital. You know that social capital piece. We trade it all the time. You trade it all the time. And in the boot camp, there's one module where I talk about a book, Influence by Cialdini is his name. And he talks about the 6 principles of influence. And one of them is reciprocity, which is exactly social capital. So if I give you things to help you with your business, at some point you might feel compelled enough to reciprocate, right? Either with an introduction to your events, people, who knows what it is, but don't think about it as social networking. Think about it as building your social capital, building your thought leadership, right? I just really invite you to be an early bird and get the book. Get the book. Get the book, right? Here's a list of the chapters. There's 13, because 13 is my lucky number. And it just really takes you through this journey of understanding who your tribe is, understanding why you need to know what your superpower is, what's this idea of sharing your smarts, and more. And it's in my voice. It's pretty fun and easy. And the companion website will be up in a while, which there'll be even more content. Much like every time I have a broadcast, I share some things in the handouts, so be sure to grab those there. The advisor website checkup, grab those there. But in the book, there's more, and there's, it's like Ginsu knife commercial. I hope you have found this information helpful. This will be converted into a YouTube video, repurposing content, right? And posted on ShoeFitts.com, appealing to the 2nd largest search engine in the world. And then my book launch will be fast and furious in June, but you can be an early adopter. So head on over to deconstructingdigital.com. And finally, in June, on the 16th, we're going to talk about easy ways to build your blogging muscle. It's a muscle, just like anything else. And I want to provide you ways to start to think about, well, okay, I keep preaching this content thing, and every time I do, there's always somebody who, it's not always, in every case, 5 or more people nod their head when I say, but you don't have time. Is that the problem? So I want to talk about how you can make time, how you can create these the content, how you can do it easily, and how you can start sharing your smarts. So thanks you all, everybody, for joining me from Denver, Colorado today. And I'll stick around maybe for a couple minutes to answer any questions, James, if we have any. But have a wonderful day, you guys, and buy the book.
Yeah, buy the book. I made it easy. Sherry put out the link from Amazon into the chat for everybody, so that is clickable. Not only, if you have the opportunity to buy the book, awesome. And if you get a chance to read it and then review, and especially with the harder launch of the book coming up in June, again, it would be great to have some reviews out there, some thoughts, so that as this gets out there to more and more people, they get to see what some of you have thought early on of this badass that we've had sharing with us for the last hour. Deconstructing Digital, I also put the link out there for you. Again, somewhat of a placeholder now until the big old launch, but we knew this was a sneak peek for all of you right now. One thing just take a minute, because we're at the top of the hour, so we're going to let folks run. We know they got a busy day ahead of them, and you do too. You've got a speaking gig coming up. But take a minute maybe, Sherry, I want to go back to that idea of planning. And we're talking to a lot of financial planners here. So the idea of planning out this content, I think, should resonate and should work well with this mindset of individuals that you're talking to that plan a lot of things. Because if you have a plan, it's a lot easier to execute when you're going to do a blog post or when you're going to do a webcast or something. Do you find that most of the teams you're able to talk to, when you tell them, hey, put this down in a plan and follow the plan, they're really able to execute that without falling off the rails too much?
I think a plan is a starting point, and many financial advisors understand that from having a financial plan, obviously. So a plan helps. So you can do some of the hard creative work, or at least brainstorming and getting it down on paper. You know, what you plan or what you write, you're able to execute more effectively. So as you're brainstorming, you go, okay, this is what we want to talk about, and here are 3 bullet points. That's what we do. And then we plan it out, and we know. And so when we're working with people to actually create content, we do the same thing. We create a plan, and then we work to execute on the plan. I have a presentation that I talk about. It's called The Mathematics of Marketing. And specifically, I walk people through what are the components of a marketing plan. In fact, I'm doing that one at the Commonwealth Conference in June.
Gotcha. And I'm going to point back to the title here as we wrap things up. The subtitle of the book, right? Deconstructing Digital is the book, but simple ways to connect with your next generation financial clients. And so that simple aspect is, again, what we're going to continue talking about with Sherry here, because you've got a lot on your plates anyway. And so we want to give you the simple ideas and how to do shorter things, the repurposing. All those ideas bring into, we don't want to put a lot on your plate. You don't want to put a lot on your plate. But they're important things to put there in small amounts that are going to yield big gains. So that's, again, a continuing kind of theme here for these broadcasts. With that, Sherry, let's cut out of here. You've got speech coming up for a group, that closing keynote out there in Denver, so we'll have you do that. Folks, again, look for the archive, which will be put up on YouTube. Check out, of course, the ShoeFitts site. We appreciate you being on board for this ShoeFitts Digital Institute live broadcast. June 16th will be the next one, so bookmark that. Join us 9 a.m. Pacific time as always. For Sherry Fitts, again, my name is James Hilliard. We'll wrap things up. Deconstructingdigital.com. Go there, bookmark it, more content to come. And we both look forward to talking to you all down the road.
Ciao. Bye, guys.